So about 2 months ago, there was an AI model that was way too dangerous to release to the public. No, not GPT-2, which was also reportedly too dangerous to release to the public. I'm talking about the real most dangerous AI model, Claude Mythos. And this time, it's serious. Wait a minute. I thought Mythos was too dangerous for us layman folk, but now, just 2 months later, it's not? So I actually recorded a video on Mythos when it got released, but I never uploaded it because I felt like there wasn't a full story there. But now, we've got a story. And it all starts with Project Glasswing, which tells you everything you need to know about Mythos, and I'm going to tell you all about it after this word from today's sponsor. If you're building a product, you probably want to know how your users are using your service. That's what PostHog is for. They are my favorite analytics platform that I've been using for over a year now. Don't make fun of my tiny numbers. This is a side project. I just wanted to show you the PostHog dashboard. But back over to their landing page. Yes, this operating system is their landing page. We can go to Project OS and see what they have to offer, because beyond analytics, they have a whole suite of dev tools to help you make a better product, from data platform tooling to automatic tooling like web analytics, as well as error tracking, logs, and one of my favorites, session replay, where you can actually watch how people use your product to see if there are any choke points or see where they fall off, so you can provide them a better user experience, which leads to lower churn. And it's also worth mentioning that PostHog is in fact open source, but even more so, you probably don't need it because their free tier is incredibly generous with 1 million events, 5,000 recordings for session replay with no hidden fees or costs because you don't even have to put in your credit card. So if you want to actually know what your users are doing with your service, check out jetty.to/posthog to learn more, or just click the link in the top of the description. So Project Glasswing. This was how Anthropic rolled out Claude Mythos. It was a new initiative that brings together all of these huge, giant Fortune 500 companies in an effort to secure the world's most critical software. And they made a very bold claim, saying that AI models, specifically Mythos is what they're referring to, have reached a level of coding capability where they can surpass all but the most skilled humans at finding and exploiting software vulnerabilities. And they have examples to back it up. They said that Mythos Preview found a 27-year-old vulnerability in OpenBSD, which has a reputation as one of the most security-hardened operating systems in the world. Mythos also discovered a 16-year-old vulnerability in FFmpeg, which is what is propping up basically the entirety of video on the internet. And not only was it able to find security vulnerabilities in these staples of software, but it also autonomously found and chained together several vulnerabilities in the Linux kernel, which, as we know, is the software that runs most of the world's servers. So basically what they did is they said, hey, enterprise customers, you should spend millions of dollars on Mythos to find vulnerabilities in your software before we release it to the public, where they'll use this dangerous AI model to find vulnerabilities in your software and exploit them. So obviously this had these enterprise customers chomping at the bit to join Project Glasswing and get their hands on this new amazing model. But when all this was going on, my BS detector was going off. None of this really made that much sense to me. Because if you recall, just a week before Mythos was released, the entirety of the Claude Code source code was leaked. And just a week before that was leaked, knowledge of Mythos itself was in an accidental data leak. And that was basically my real-time feelings. This is what I said on April 8th when all of this was going on. Mythos is scary. I get it. But how is it that this amazing AI model can exploit these insane software vulnerabilities, yet forget to npm ignore a .map file, which is how Claude Code source code was leaked? Or how do they just now finally fix Claude Code's flicker, which apparently hadn't been fixed at the time, I don't know if it is now, and continue to have a worse uptime than the pre-AI era with a status page that's oftentimes incorrect in reporting these frequent outages? And I say this because they've been internally using Mythos since February 24th. And I understand that these are not one-to-one comparisons of, what is a red team type task, finding vulnerabilities, things of that nature, versus uptime and leaking code and things of that nature. But they said in their own announcement that Claude Mythos Preview is a general purpose model. And let's not forget that Anthropic has code review features. So if the model is really this good at finding security vulnerabilities and things of that nature and its general purpose, how is it making all of these silly little mistakes? And I know some folks believe that maybe the Claude Code team didn't have access to Mythos, but I believe that that is a highly unlikely scenario because the Claude Code team in Claude Code, based on the source code that they leaked and we saw, they had implemented numerous things surrounding Mythos, which is Capybara in the code base. If you haven't watched that video, you can take a look at it. I'll link it below, or it's on my channel. And sure, one could say they're implementing it for another team, but the thing is that they had a good amount of special behavior handling and prompt tweaks and rather specific tuning, among other things, that would make a whole lot more sense to becoming firsthand from the Claude Code team using Mythos and implementing these guardrails and features around Mythos in Claude Code than just getting it secondhand from another team. So that's just my rebuttal to folks saying that the Claude Code team didn't have access to Mythos. I don't think that's the case. I think they did. So that was the whole entire Mythos launch situation. A lot of fear-inducing things about how dangerous this model was, and it's going to break all software because anybody who has access to this model is just going to find vulnerabilities and exploit vulnerabilities, and all software is going to be destroyed as we know it, effectively. But then things kind of fizzled out after a week or so. I mean, we couldn't access Mythos, and the companies who could aren't discussing their vulnerabilities publicly until the Mozilla Firefox team did, where they wrote this blog post about behind the scenes hardening Firefox with Claude Mythos Preview. And it seems that they had good luck. They said suddenly the bugs are very good. Just a few months ago, AI-generated security bug reports to open source projects were mostly known for being unwanted slop. But since Mythos, they have just shipped a whole bunch of fixes where you can see all of the bug IDs and descriptions here for a handful of them. And now they didn't explicitly say that Mythos found these exact bugs. It is implied. And the reason I say it like that is because this was my first foray into hearing about Firefox using Mythos and releasing their results. And that is from this fella, Alex from Anthropic, where he said, with the help of Claude Mythos Preview, the Firefox team fixed more security bugs in April than in the past 15 months combined. There's just one issue with this. And maybe I'm crazy, but the thing is, every single big company that I have gone in and worked with the team or worked for, have a giant backlog of security bugs ready to be fixed. And they'll fix some higher vulnerability ones sooner rather than later, of course, but there are a lot of them sitting right there in the backlog, ready for the team to tackle if they can allocate the resources for the team to tackle it. So I admitted, while Mythos is finding more bugs, they are not remediating them. That's still done solely by the engineers per their own article. So what I was confused about is, why is Mythos getting the credit just because Firefox finally decided to start tackling these bugs? It just doesn't really make any sense to me, because this chart has nothing to do with Mythos. Firefox at any time could have deployed all of these engineers to fix all of the security bugs that were in their backlog and see this number regardless of how many Mythos found, which I believe they said was 271 bugs. So that means that from February to April, 271 of these, so half roughly, were found by Mythos, and that the other half were already in their backlog or were being found during these months by other engineers, security researchers, whoever. Is this a little nitpick? Yeah, but I think it goes into the marketing play by Anthropic. They're trying to say how dangerous this model is, how You need to be exclusively added to Project Glasswing to get access to this incredibly dangerous model and spend millions of dollars in inference. And look at all of these bugs that Mozilla Firefox team has fixed thanks to Mythos. If you wanted to brag about Mythos, brag about the 180 high security bugs it found, not the work that the Firefox engineers could have accomplished before Mythos even existed. All right, let's calm down a little bit. Because frankly, finding 180 high security bugs, 80 moderate security bugs, and then 11 low security bugs, AI doing that effectively autonomously, although Firefox did create their own harness and things of that nature for Mythos to better work with their code base. Regardless of all that, that's still pretty good. I'm not sitting here saying that Mythos is useless by any stretch of the imagination. If you haven't caught on now, I'm just saying that I think the marketing and the fear mongering, saying it's so dangerous, this, that, and the other, and it's going to destroy all the software, is a little bit overblown. Which brings us to the next case study, Curl. Because Curl had a bit of a different experience. Curl creator tests the too dangerous Mythos AI and calls it marketing after it found one bug. Well, hold on, let's set the record straight. It actually found 5 bugs. It just so happened that out of these 5 bugs, 3 were false positives, and the 4th we deemed just a bug, whereas the remaining one was a single confirmed vulnerability, which is going to end up a severity low CVE. So does that mean Mythos sucks? No. It may mean that Curl is a highly audited code base that has pretty daggum good security. It also means that Mythos doesn't find all of the vulnerabilities in a single code base, because even after Mythos had gone through the Curl code base, more vulnerabilities were found. So really the conclusion that the creator of Curl came to is that any project that has not scanned their source code with AI-powered tooling will likely find a huge number of flaws, bugs, and possible vulnerabilities with this new generation of tools. Mythos will, and so will many of the others. And he said he doesn't believe Mythos is useless, obviously, but rather that many in the industry may falsely be treating an evolutionary step like a revolutionary one. So between this Curl case study where Mythos found this one low severity vulnerability, as well as the ones Mythos found for Firefox, the others they listed in the initial Project Glasswing announcement, as well as a handful more in this Project Glasswing initial update from May 22nd, that has a handful of other examples of what Mythos can do, including, this one's pretty cool, Mythos Preview helped to detect and prevent a fraudulent $1.5 million wire transfer at one of our Glasswing partner banks after a threat actor compromised a customer's email account and made spoof phone calls. And you can see more of what Mythos did here and throughout the rest of the article. So between all that, Mythos does work. Mythos can and will find vulnerabilities and security bugs of high severity, high security, but so can GPT 5.5. And so can Opus 4.8. But that's neither here nor there. The reason I wanted to mention, obviously, the case studies is to show what Mythos can actually do. It doesn't suck. It's not useless. That's not what I'm saying. But the marketing was way overhyped. And I don't think it was an accident. Because let's take a look at the timeline here. 2 months ago, they announced Mythos with this wildly effective marketing campaign, securing all of these top enterprise clients, which they probably had most of these as clients anyway, but now getting them to spend even more money and spend more money publicly with the announcement of Project Glasswing. And then would you look at that? They were in the midst of raising for their final fund at a $965 billion valuation, up from their $380 billion valuation just about 3.5 months prior. Now, is that solely due to the hype of Mythos? No. Was Anthropic trending higher valuations with each raise? Yes.
Stop asking yourself easy questions so you look like a genius.
Got it.
Sorry. But it is interesting timing, though, as well as for the fact that they just filed for an IPO. And all of that brings us to today. After the IPO has been filed, after the final funding round has been raised, Anthropic is going to start rolling out this insanely dangerous Mythos model to us layman folk to destroy all software as we know it, or at least all software that wasn't a part of Project Glasswing, which is most of it. And it's also not beyond me that they announced their rollout of Mythos to the general public as soon as they secured an agreement to lease the entirety of XAI's Colossus 1, all 300 megawatts of compute that was built for Grok and XAI. So it's almost as if Anthropic had Mythos ready to go, but didn't have enough compute for us all to use it. So they limited access to it under the guise of it being an insanely dangerous model that's going to destroy all software, only allowing exclusive access to Fortune 500 companies, which in turn allowed them to pump up their valuation for their final funding round and their IPO, just to release the dangerous model to the general public once they have enough compute to do so. But that's just a theory.